Well, switching gears then, this is something you did say on Twitter that caught my attention. But we're switching gears now to the election. You said Joe Biden has to go. It's an urgent matter of national security. If the Democratic Party can't see that, then it too has to go. Saying that it's an urgent matter of national security, a lot of people will be sort of alarmed. They'll think that's a really big statement to make. How would you back that up?
I would say it is actually obvious that this is true. Okay. And anybody who doesn't see that has not properly understood the role of the president and the ferocious power at their disposal. Joe Biden, look, I have never been a Joe Biden fan. Okay. Joe Biden is a deeply corrupt influence peddler who is selling the American public out to wealthy people who have interests that are contrary to the citizenry. That has been true since before he was president. That is reason enough, in my mind, to remove him from office. But that is not what I'm talking about. Okay. Let me just say this. I also detest Kamala Harris for the same reason, right? She's newer at this game, but she's clearly an aspiring influence peddler who will say anything to get ahead. The implication of my tweet is that Kamala Harris should be president. You've just heard me say that I detest this person. I do not trust her, right? However, Kamala Harris is not senile, right? That means if something happens and a phone call has to be said to be made, and somebody has to say, Madam President, we have 4 minutes to make a call. We have to decide whether or not to launch nuclear weapons. Here's what happens if whatever the thing is what we think it is, and we don't launch. Here's what happens if we do launch. What do we do? Right? I don't want Kamala Harris making that decision. I don't trust her. However, I do believe she could understand what she was being told.
Yeah.
Right? She is a human being in possession of her mental faculties. Joe Biden has, from before his election, been clearly losing his mental faculties. You can't have a person who is not in possession of his mental faculties in that role. It is too dangerous for planet Earth. It is an offense to all the citizens of Earth, right? Most citizens of Earth don't get a vote in American elections. This is an offense to every single one of them, that you would play games with their safety by having somebody who is not fully mentally competent in that office, and getting less so with each passing month.
Yeah.
Right. So my feeling is, I would say the same thing. I don't want Trump in that office either. But if the phone call comes, do I rather that the phone call goes to Joe Biden in his state, or do I rather it goes to Donald Trump in his state? I'd much rather have Donald Trump get that phone call, right? Why? Because he's mentally present. So this is a matter of national security. There's nothing political in what I said, right? What I said is you can't have a country with this kind of power with a mentally incompetent chief executive. That is not a safe thing to do. I would also point out Joe Biden is clearly not doing the job of president. He is being scripted to keep him in a relatively flattering light, to reduce the number of opportunities he has to make gaffes, to get him to say stuff that is roughly in keeping with the themes that the DNC wants people to hear. But he's not a functional president. I don't think it's plausible that he's really evaluating what he needs to evaluate and coming to conclusions based on input from a wide range of advisors. I don't think he's doing that job, which, to my mind, is terrifying. I live in a democratic republic. We vote for presidents. They are not superheroes. They make decisions based on advisors. Those advisors have perverse incentives. We all get this. But we are allowed to elect somebody to do the best they can in that situation. If Joe Biden is not functionally president, something has happened. What is president? Can we call it before Congress and question it? Right? Something has happened that has breached our Constitution. It's not the first time this has been happening with increasing regularity, and I would say has been particularly aggressive since 9/11. But it is frightening that a country as powerful as the United States is now governed by a mechanism that nobody can describe, right? Joe Biden is standing in for something, and nobody knows what the something is. So that's two grounds on which this is an urgent matter of national security. He must be removed from office, even though that puts Kamala Harris in the office. Kamala Harris is at least a person who can be called in front of Congress and questioned about why she made a decision.
Yeah, I see that. I remember when we had this conversation back in 2020, I remember being quite stumped at, the fact that you had two people running for president who, both were in their 70s, deep in their 70s. And I think that here in the UK, we certainly don't have the best recent history of great prime ministers. But one thing we've always done, or in my adult life, is we've always had quite, not naive young, but we've always had quite young, quite fresh prime ministers. I mean, you look now, Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, Liz Truss. They might not be the best prime minister, but you knew that their mental faculty, they had control of their mental faculties, and that's the least you can ask for, I guess.
It's an absolute requirement.
Yeah.
100%. And let's put it this way. Everybody who is participating in the fiction of Joe Biden's competence is guilty of a betrayal of the citizens of the United States and really all of humanity. This is too powerful a country to play games with what is in control, for example, of our nuclear arsenal, right? And it's not as if this would all be true if the international stage were comparatively quiescent at the moment, but it isn't. We're playing games with Russia, right? Nuclear games. You can't have this person in that office at any moment, let alone this moment. So, and not only do we have this incompetent person in this office at this moment, but his corruption is connected to Ukraine. This couldn't possibly be a worse organization of entities for the well-being of Americans or Earthlings or Russians or anything, right? This is a complete disaster. And I don't know why it's so hard for people to see it. I think it's a boiling frog issue, right? This happened incrementally. And so people, if they had been teleported into this moment, they'd be absolutely beside themselves. But because they got here slowly, they don't see it. Oh, the most powerful nation on earth with the most ferocious nuclear arsenal that exists is now being governed by a structure in which the chief executive, the person with the right to launch those weapons, is obviously suffering from a progressive degradation of mental capacity. How is that not the central question? I don't know.